let's talk about React components. So the component is the most fundamental structure in React. Yeah, when you first start learning React, that's the first thing you come across. So what is a component? A component is something you can reuse. So you know when you go on holidays and you go to a website like Airbnb, and then you got the typical calendar also when you want to fly somewhere, yeah? So you got a calendar here, and then you got a calendar there, check in, check out, or fly out and return and things like that, right? So, I mean, technically speaking, even though we got a visual piece of UI twice, technically speaking, it's been written only once. Yeah, so that's a component. A component is a piece of user interface that we can reuse multiple times to simplify the process of scaling your web app. So, in other words, let me present you a problem. Imagine that I want to display a message, like, I don't know, let me think about a good topic. Let me talk about Hollywood movies, for instance. Yeah, I just made that up. So we can create a div and then display title Titanic, and then we can do year 1997, yeah, something like that. And of course, if we're building a movie database, we will have potentially multiple movies, right? Title Terminator 2, year 1991, title Shark Exorcist, year 2000. What is this? You know what Shark Exorcist? That's the best movie ever. Hello? Hello? What you been doing on the last decade? You should definitely attend next week workshop. By the way, on Wednesday, I will be creating an app with React. And actually, the session will be similar to this one, but a bit slower because we'll have like 35 people here. So I will strongly recommend you to attend that session because I will help to fully master these things, right? Anyway, so we got these three movies. Imagine that you are Netflix, right? And imagine that. Well, let's see how this looks like first of all. Yeah, this is our movie database. Eh? It's not very multimedia. On Wednesday, we'll talk about adding images and to make it a bit more sexy for customers. But anyway, that's not the scope of this session. So you go to your movie database, and imagine that now your business, your UX specialist is saying, hey, you know what? The title, we want to change that format a bit because the title is very small, right? Can we make the title bolder? Yeah, so do you know, first of all, in HTML, how to make a text bolder? B. Yeah, do you remember yesterday talking about semantic tags? So, or strong, yeah, so you can do either strong, that's right, Anita. And let's see if it works. Here you go, you see? Or even if you want just to highlight the name of the movie instead of the title, you know, something like that. Yeah? Can you see it's bolder, Titanic now? All right, so of course we can go one by one, you see, and change the style of our sexy movies so it satisfies the appetite of our UX specialists. But the problem is, it took me 20 seconds because I had only 3 movies. But what happens if you are Netflix? Netflix doesn't have 3 movies, they have 3,000. So do you think that Netflix engineers go one by one doing this type of things? Clearly not, clearly not. Why? Because they found a way to reuse data structures. And this is where the component is. So I'm going to create the very first component ever. So instead of applying any potential change as many times as movies we have, simply by changing the algorithm once, all the movies will inherit the change. And to do that, let me show you the first way of creating a component. So a component at least on its most basic shape, it's just a JavaScript function. If you remember on Tuesday, we presented a JavaScript function. Yeah? So a JavaScript function is something like that. Function, and then the name of your function, let me call it movie. Yeah? Do you remember how to create a function? Yeah? Or something like that, right? And now return, you can return a piece of HTML. You can do something like that. Yeah? So whenever we deal with that function, it will display that piece of HTML. By the way, that looks a bit weird. You see all this spacing? You remember on Monday I complained a lot about the spacing and stuff like that? So you can manually try to format it, manually, but if you have a big mess, imagine that because of whatever reason, I paste from the clipboard, something like that, right? Which is very messy. So with VS Code, Rochelle, back to your question earlier on, you can do right click, and now format document. Or the shortcut is on Mac, Command-Shift-F, on Windows I think it's Control-Shift-F or something like that. So if I click here, pop, you see, VS Code will help on that. It's not always perfect. Sometimes it does funny things, but 99% of the time I think it's pretty accurate. One more thing, talking about formatting. I'm not a big fan. I think that's okay, but I'm not a big fan of that, and I'll tell you why. So when I open a tag, like I did, I like to close it on the semi-indentation level. You see? I open the tag here. If I follow, you see that line? If I follow this vertical line, that will tell me where the tag closes. However, it doesn't work here, you see? I open the tag here, but it doesn't close there. Again, that's not the end of the world. But what I like to do, and that's personal, parentheses, and now, yeah. To me, personally, that's more readable because I open the div and I close it. You see? And remember the semicolon. All right, so now we got our movie component, but how do we interact with it? Because at the moment, I mean, I can talk about Brexit or whatever, it's not going to be displayed, right? No one is actually dealing with that function. No one is calling it. So does anyone know how do we render that content from here? This is just an HTML tag. It's just HTML. Because this is just HTML, you can do that. You see? So easy, right? And of course, you got your movie. So what happens if I copy it? Do you agree with me if I tell you that it will display Titanic 3 times? That's right. It works as designed, but not as expected, because we don't want to display Titanic 3 times. So now the question is, how do we, even though the structure is valid, because we want to have the same structure, word title, word year, we want to customize the data a bit. Yeah? We want to change the name of the movie, and we want to change the year the movie was originally released. So now let's learn how to dynamically pass data to our movie component. The way we do that is just by passing HTML attributes. You remember yesterday when talking about CSS specificity, we presented attributes, HTML attributes. You remember the specificity number associated to attributes? Wrong. 10, that's correct, Octavian. Yeah, specificity attributes had number 10. So here I can pass attributes, whatever I want, to be honest. So for instance, the title, I just made that up. Yeah, this is not based on any standard. Title, Titanic. And then, well, let me change the movies because I realized that you didn't know Shark Exorcist. So let me talk about good similar movies. Mega Shark versus Crocosaurus. And then you got also Mega Python versus Gatoroid. And finally, of course, the classic Shark Exorcist. Sharknado, yeah. Yeah, you know, I know the people that created these movies. They invited me to go to America because I'm a big fan of these movies. I'm like not an influencer, but I'm spreading the word, and many people knows them. And they invited me to go to America to be like one of these extras that gets killed by a big octopus and things like that. It's probably my only reason to go to America at some point in my life. Anyway, so you got the free titles, right? But now the question is, will my free sexy movies be displayed or not? No. Why not? We haven't got, no, we are calling the movie function, so we are definitely rendering. But what happened with my title? Correct. So the movie doesn't care yet about the data, right? Title. But then what? Still hard coding, Titanic. Yeah? So that won't work yet. So now the question is, how do we bind, how do we connect with that thingy? According to React, we can pass a variable here that we used to call props. And props is an object. Do you remember we briefly talked about objects on Tuesday? So props is an object containing all the information that we are facilitating. So here, how do we access the title? It's as simple as doing props dot what? Title. That's correct. Why title? Because that's the name of my attribute. Title, title, title. Props dot title. Let's see if that works or not. Let's see what happens. This is going to be interesting. Oh. Do you know when you subscribe by mistake, or maybe not by mistake, to any website, and from time to time they send you a newsletter, and sometimes they tell you, hello, $user. Like, who the hell is $user, right? Because they fail to transform a variable into your actual name. So that's important here. Yeah, props.title. I didn't want to display props.title. I really want to display megasarc. So what do we need to do? This is very important, guys. In React, whenever you want to interpolate or you want to display a JavaScript variable, and props.title is a JavaScript variable, you have to surround it with the most popular character in React, which is the curly brace. Like that. Say it again?
Do we need to add dollar and...
No dollar. No. So just use curly brace, and then inside of the curly braces, you put your JavaScript magic, your JavaScript variable. Yeah, that's it. As you may have noticed, maybe not, because of the quality of the projector, it has changed the color. Look, without the curly brace, it's white. You see? It's just plain text. But as soon as I add the curly brace, it becomes blue. It means like it's something special, something different. Yeah? Props.title. Let's see if it works this time. Here we go. The titles are dynamic. So we managed to bind the app component, which is like the main component, semicolon, with the movie component. That is our new component. So likewise, can you please tell me, because I'm not going to do that, how do we change the year? Yeah, one more attribute. How we call it? Year. So Megasarc Trichosaurus 2011, MegaPython versus Gatoroid 2012, and Sarc Exorcist, I think. Where's that? I think it's 2013. I don't remember this one. Something like that. Will it work?
No.
Why not? What happened in the movie function?
So where you've got 1997, replace that with the curly braces props up here.
Like that?
Inside curly braces.
Like that?
Around just props like here.
Correct. That's wrong, eh? Look, VS Code is complaining already. So you only put in curly, curly braces the variable itself. Year is not a variable. Year is just my text, yeah? It's a static, it's hard-coded. But the variable itself is the year. That's the dynamic bit. And now look, boom. Yeah? It works. It works. So what happened if now business wants to, for instance, change the size of the title. Business believe title is not large enough. How do you change the size of the title of a bit of text in HTML, guys? We did it on Monday. HTML.
What's the question?
I want to increase the size of the title. H1, for instance. Yeah, you remember that? With H1, look, boom. I mean, it looks horrible, but I hope you agree with me. It worked, right? In other words, how many times now we had to change the size of the text? Once. It doesn't matter if my database has 1 movie or 1 trillion movies. One change, and all the movies will take the changes. Yeah? That's a component, a piece of code that returns a piece of HTML. Okay? Any questions? No? Fish? Any questions? No? I mean, it's not that complicated, right? When talking about components, it's fair to say that there are 2 types of components. This is the most fundamental one. And unless you have a good reason, and we'll talk about that later on at 10 past 11, that's the way you should work with React. Functions. You get a function, and the function returns a piece of HTML. If you need to customize the data a bit, you pass attributes, and then you display them. Yeah, that's it. That's it. That will be 90% of your time dealing with React. However, in some specific circumstances, that type of component is not enough. So I'm going to do something. I'm going to build literally the same example using a different syntax. Let me present you what in React we call a stateful component or a class component. If you check some tutorials on the internet, I'm sure you already came across that. So once again, I'm not going to build any new functionality. I'm going to build the same thing, but following a different style. And once again, at 10 past 11, we will see why React offers 2 styles to build the same thing. So to build a stateful component, we don't create a function. We create something slightly different, which is a class. We haven't covered classes yet. Class is a data structure very common in other programming languages, like Java or C#. Look at the syntax, because the syntax is more complicated. Yeah? The syntax is more complicated. So first of all, class movie, same component name, no problem at all. And now look, you have to type extends react.component. That's weird, right? So what we do here is we are telling React that that class is in reality a React component. Okay? That's the syntax. And now, we have to type some methods. The most fundamental one is a method called render. Oops, look at the syntax. This is not easy or hard, you just need to remember how to do it. Yeah? Render. And as part of the render method, you can just return a piece of HTML. So then let me paste what we did before. You see? And one more thing. On the function, on the original component, we were passing props as an argument. Yeah? That's why then we can do props.title, props.year, whatever. In here, we don't have that ability. We don't pass the props. So the syntax is slightly different. The way to bind with the attribute is by adding a this.prefix. This.props.title and this.props.year. And that's it. So that class component is equivalent to that function component. Let's see if it works, first of all. You see, it still works. The functionality remains the same. Which one do you think it's easier? The class or stateful, or the function, or stateless. Stateless, that's easier, right? That's easier. So if that's easier, why do we bother about that complex structure? There is a reason, and we'll check that reason later on today. If it helps, the community really realize that this is exhausting. And now we're trying to get rid of that. So probably if you start working as a React developer, in 2 years' time, no one will really use that. But you don't want to wait 2 years until you get a job, right? So personally, I never ever do that anymore. Never. Yeah. But if you go to a job interview, they are likely to ask you how a class component works. That's why I believe it's important to understand how it works. Yeah. Go for it.
So you get props in the function,
Yes,
but you don't get props.
that's correct. That's correct. No, you don't have props here because that's a class, and class work in a different way.
But why did you put props?
No, because it's these little props. So there is some magic, guys. There is some magic under the hood. Yeah. So when you create a class, React is automatically enabling that thingy here, and thanks to that, you can link with the properties. So once again, you are not expected to fully understand that. You are just expected to know how to do it. Yeah. So the way to bind with attributes in a class is this dot props. The way to bind with attributes in a function is just props. Yeah? So just adding this dot prefix. That's the only thing. You need to get used to that. Yeah? I know you have many questions, but don't try to understand every single line or try to argue every single line, because otherwise you will get mad. Yeah? There is, once again, some magic. There are some assumptions you need to take here, apart from the semicolon. Any other questions? Right, so I mean, I'll tell you something, that's pretty much it. So that's the introduction to components. Because we're already talking about class components, let me get a bit deeper into that. And that will help you to understand the next workshop at 11:10. So the way a class component works is based on a bunch of functions. So you can set up the life cycle of the component. For instance, let me show you an example. There is something called Constructor. We don't even need it here in this particular exercise. We will need that later on today. But for now, we don't need it. But the constructor, FYI, is the first method that runs whenever the component is initialized. So when we display the component, first of all, we run the constructor. This is very useful to initialize, to set up your component. Another method, and that's the last one I would like to show you, is component did mount. Maybe you already came across that. Component did mount. That happens after the component got initially rendered. So the flow is, and that's also a classic job interview. They show you an algorithm, a function, sorry, not a function, a class like this one, and they ask you, just let's have a chat about it. So it's a very good exercise to let them know you know the execution order. First of all, constructor, that's the first method. Then render. And once the render method ran, component did mount. Look at the past of the verb. Yeah, component did mount. So that means the component is already available. The user can see the HTML already. After that happened, then we do something here. What do we do here? We'll see that later on. But for now, that's what you have to know. Yeah? So, how do we prove that our theory is right? Let me do something. Let me do a console.log. This is the constructor. Yeah. And then let me add another console log. So this is the messages that you can display on the DevTools. So component did mount, this is component did mount. And finally render console.log, this is rendered. Why I'm doing that? Just to prove my theory. Back to Google Chrome, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because you need to know something else. When you define a constructor, and once again, this is just magic, just do it. Just do it. When you create a constructor, you need to do that. You need to write the word super and open and close parentheses. That's the way JavaScript works and React works. Yeah? So I'm not even going to explain that. We may talk about that on the last week of the bootcamp. Yeah? So one thing at a time. And now look, it works, right? We haven't changed anything. We just added some logs. How do we check the logs on DevTools? Do you remember DevTools? We talked about that a couple of times already, right? Right click, inspect. Now, hopefully, you will see by default, here you go. Let me zoom that a bit. You got a console tab on top, you see? So let me refresh the page. You see? Why we get all these messages? Because we got free movies, yeah? So on each movie, we are displaying some console logs. To simplify things a bit, let me keep a single movie, yeah? Just for testing purposes. You see? I only want to display Megasaur versus Crocosaurus. And then look, you see? We got free console logs. This is the constructor, this is the render, and this is the component it mount. Does it make sense? So once again, the important thing here is to get a feeling about the different methods that you can set up in React. There are others, there are like 7 or 8, but these are the 3 most important ones for sure. And one more thing. Let me introduce you to the debugger. This is vital. This is absolutely vital. It feels very awkward to interview a senior developer and present him or her a problem. So that's a classic interview process. So you present an algorithm that doesn't work. Yeah? Maybe you broke it. You, as the interviewer, you broke it on purpose because you want to see if the candidate has the ability to identify, to spot where the problem is. Yeah? It feels very weird, and you can't imagine how many times that happened. So for instance, back to you remember when I didn't have the super, it doesn't work, right? You get an error. So you are expecting the candidate to identify why you got that error. And it's very weird when they start like looking around the screen, scrolling down, scrolling up, back to the Visual Studio, scrolling up, scrolling down, back to the browser, scrolling up, scrolling down, 20 minutes, waste of time. Mentally speaking, you are thinking the candidate won't get the job. So whenever that happens, the very first thing you have to do when you do a pairing exercise with an employer is open DevTools. That's the first thing. The first thing, because that proves that your approach is right. Like, okay, first of all, let's open DevTools. So if there is any error, if there is any problem, I will quickly spot it. Yeah, because at the bottom, you'll get some red text, or it will be much easier to spot the problem. And also, talking about debugging. As you will know already, you got a sources tab. We talked about that, it was on Tuesday, I believe. You remember when we did a bit of testing with JavaScript? I present you the sources tab. And we did a bit of snippet. You remember? Hello Roselle climbing Friday, we did that test. So from this view, we can interact with the React code that we have generated. And how do we do that? Look, on the left-hand side, if we select page, this is the same as you got on Visual Studio. You see? Source, app, yeah? So you got a bunch of folders and files. You see? App.css, app.javascript. So that's essentially the same you get here. App.css, app.javascript, but this is handled by the browser directly. So let's select app.javascript. This is the file we are dealing with. Do you agree with me? That's the same content we have generated. If you struggle to find your JavaScript file, let me show you shortcut. if you press Command P on Mac or Control P on Windows, you can find your files. Here is not a big issue because we got 2 or 3 files. But what happens if you got 3,000 files? It may be challenging to find the file you are looking for. So once you get that, you can simply type app.js and Google Chrome will hopefully find it quickly. All right, so now let's do something fun. Starting from this moment, you will see I will refer often to the DevTools. For what? To click on some lines. You see? I just click on line number 8, I click on line number 11, and I click on line number 16. What that implies? That implies if I refresh the page, the execution will stop here, here, and there. This is what we call debugging. Thanks to debugging, we can trace the execution of our app. And I think that's a very good way to really see what's going on. So let's play a game. Starting from today, I'm going to ask you questions. And whenever you get these questions right, you will get some extra points on the board challenge. Yeah? Some of you, the majority of you already participated on the board challenge. If you didn't, probably it's too late because Esteban is going to review it officially after lunch. Anyway, as part of the board challenge, yeah.
So in an interview process, better just open immediately the.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Don't check if there are missing semicolons, if the code is really small.
The order doesn't really matter, but if you have to interact with the app, if you have to add new code, or you have to check where the problem is, at some point, please open DevTools. Someone unable to open DevTools won't get the job. Because that's natural. When there is a problem, you open DevTools. Yeah? So, as part of the board challenge, starting from next week, you will get points, depending on your performance. Yeah? If you manage to provide a convincing answer to the problem, you get 4 points. If your answer is horrible, you will get 0 points. Yeah? So we'll have a board challenge rank. But the way to get points is not only by participating. Here, if you provide right answers, you can get points as well. So,
You win something.
you win my respect. You can add that to LinkedIn.
A wrap in the bar.
Exactly. You get on the last day of the bootcamp. We may do a party. The first pint will be on me. All right. So you see, I got 3 breakpoints: line number 8, line number 12, and line number 16. So I'm going to ask you what the execution order is. So does anyone wants to participate before I individually attack you with questions? Florin? Florin, what's the execution order?
First is constructor.
Numbers, I just want numbers.
8, 16, and 12.
8, 16, and 12. All right, so that's Florin's solution. Yeah? You will see that, for instance, if I realize that Florin knows the answer, he won't be allowed to participate anymore because I want to give the opportunity to everybody to get some points here. But because that's the first time, so Florin thinks that. So what do you think, guys? Do you agree? Does anyone has a different approach?
Sorry, I didn't really understand the question.
I'm going to refresh the page. As soon as I refresh the page, imagine that this is the Jubilee line, and I got 3 stations, 8, 12, and 16. So I want to see which one goes first, which one goes second, and which one goes last. Yeah? So anyone has a different opinion? No? So everybody agrees on that?
I think
So Andrea,
it stops at 1 and you have to.
so what give me numbers. What are your numbers?
It executes everything until the 8.
I just want numbers, Andrea. 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Oh, okay, wait.
Just
Just the green ones. If you don't highlight the line, the browser won't stop there. So there are only 3 possible answers: 8, 12, and 16. Technically speaking, it could stop more than once in one line. I think that's an important thing. So Andrea, what's your solution? 8, and then what? Nothing else. All right? 8 and nothing else. Good. Anyone else? Anyone supporting Andrea?
So when you run,
Yep.
what will happen?
You will see in a minute.
You
I want you to be able to predict what Google Chrome will do, because the interviewer may ask you that. What's the execution order? So you should be able to understand the flow of the app. So, Kaini, do you have a different opinion?
first time when you run it,
Yeah.
it will stop before 8.
Before 8.
It wouldn't work, and so you have to.
So there is something basic we need to understand. The browser will only stop whenever I tell him. It will only stop on line number 8, it will only stop on line number 12, it will only stop. I mean, of course, the first thing the browser will run, it will go to line number 7, but it's not going to stop on line number 7 because I don't have any breakpoint, I don't have any speed trap. Yeah? So it will only stop when I tell the browser to stop, 8, 12, and 16. So out of that list of 8, 12, and 16, anyone wants to say something else? Anyone has a different opinion, like 8, 12, 16, or 16, 12, 8, or 8, 8, 8, or 12, 12, 16? I don't know. Anyone has a different opinion? No? All right, so Ji-Yoon suggested 8, 12, and 16. All right?
Okay. 8, 8, 8 is.
No, you already participated. That's a basic rule on this game. Once you share your thoughts, you are not allowed to change your mind. Why we do that? Because developers, they tend to talk too much. Please think twice or thrice before saying your thoughts. You said 8, that's it. Next time. Yeah, cool. Anybody else with different opinion? I mean, if you don't have any different opinion, that means that you agree with any of these 3 people.
I don't know what you mean by stop.
So first of all, Alex, what are your thoughts? Where is your money up today?
I don't know what you mean by stop. When you say it's going to stop, I don't know what that means.
You'll figure out in a minute.
I'm going to guess what Florence said.
Okay, so Flooring, Alex, Fish, what do you think?
I'll follow
You follow?
you.
Okay. And we got Chuck.
Yeah, I've got my money on Florida.
And we got Camila. Anita. Rochelle.
We're gonna lose the money, guys.
And I think Octavian, right? Unless I miss someone else.
Exactly. Blind betting, I don't understand really, so I don't understand
Right. I'll tell you something. If you really don't understand, I think it's extremely healthy to say, I'm sorry, I don't understand that. Otherwise, the message you are sending is wrong. The message you are sending is, I understand that, they are right, I follow them. If you don't understand that, then let's do something. So, Gi-Yoon, you've lost the only supporter you got, I'm afraid. But there is a new group of people, Fish and Octavian. That's what it is, right? Cool. So, only one group of people or one individual, let's say, got promoted to the next step of the interview. Let's run it. Let's find out who is right. If I refresh the page, you see what happened? Yeah? So now the browser stopped. The app is not available. It freezes everything. And you can clearly see it's highlighting the point where the execution is at the moment. As I told you before, the constructor is the first method, which makes sense because this is where we initialize everything. Yeah? That's unsurprising. So far, everybody's right, because everybody said that the first breakpoint, the first station, was line number 8. And now the point is, by definition, now some people will be wrong, yeah, because now is where we start with a disagreement. A big group of people thought that the next step on this journey is render. Also, Ji-Yoon thought that the next step is component did mount, yeah, and Andrea said that nothing else will happen afterwards. All right, so let's see what happened next. You see, I have a tiny play button. Technically speaking, is here as well. Resume the script execution. So if I click here, it will jump to the next stop. Yeah. Cool. Render. Mind the gap. Right. So you can see that the next stop is 16. That means that this block of people was right. Yeah. Why 16? Because, sorry, as we said before, after Constructor, React will try to render something immediately. And then, once the component has been rendered, look at what happened. If I click again, look, that's very important, guys. The component is visible, you see? It's available for the users. And at that time, then React calls component did mount. And now, if you are right, nothing else will happen. It won't call render, it won't call the constructor, so that should be it. The app will be available as soon as I resume the script. Here you go, that's it. Yeah? 8, 16, and 12. Does it make sense? Yeah? All right, so that's the way a state full component works. Any questions?
Are there some things you can't necessarily correct on the tools? Are there some things that you always need to start with just for the code?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
So like, you told us that we should very immediately.
Yes, DevTools, yeah? Yeah, correct.
So what is the opposite scenario where you go immediately to those?
So without DevTools, imagine we don't have DevTools, yeah? Or we don't know that DevTools exist, the way a bad developer will analyze the flow is by adding console logs or by adding things like that. Look, alert. You know what alert means? Alert will display a very ugly pop-up in the middle of the screen. Yeah, imagine I have no idea about what DevTools is. You see? I will get messages. This is the constructor, and then this is the render, and then this is the component in mount. That's horrible. But even though it's horrible, that proves the flow as well. Yeah, this is the constructor, this is the render, this is the component in mount. But that's bad. If someone is doing that, out, immediately, out. This is very dangerous. What happened? If you really want to do that for testing purposes, but then you forget to remove the alerts. You forget about that. And you commit and you push. And then suddenly, all your customers, they jump into your app, and then, this is the constructor, what the hell? What it means? This is the render? That's dangerous. That's dangerous, right? So that's not the way you really want to debug your apps. Yeah? So using DevTools, we don't have to mess around with weird messaging for testing purposes. We just go to DevTools, we add breakpoints, and then we analyze the flow. Anything else? Yep.
What happens if you add another 2 components?
Another 2 components. That's a good question. That's a good question.
I was sure there was 3.
Yep. Let me bring them back. What happened in terms of what? Of alerts, of breakpoints, or?
Breakpoints.
All right, so let me bring the console log back. So what will happen in this particular case is, let me refresh the page once I stop getting spam by console, by the alerts. Here you go. So let's reopen the DevTools. Look, now we got 3 components. By the way, Florin gets 1 point because of being the first one on giving a good answer. Now, there are 4 points for the first person to give me a good answer. You are not expecting to give me a good answer here because this is complicated. But if you get close, I mean, even if you fail, but the answer makes sense, you may get 1.5 points. All right, so now my question is, you see what I did, right? I added 3 movie components, and I got 3 breakpoints. So the breakpoints are the same. The breakpoints are the same. So, Andrea, so what's the execution order?
8, 16, 8, 16, 8, 16, 12, 12.
So that's Andrea. Any other opinion? Florin?
8, 16, 12, 8, 16, 12, 8, 16, 12.
All right. Anyone else?
I'm with Andrea this time, sorry for him.
So Alex is with Andrea.
Can you go back to the Visual Studio?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I haven't changed the code. The code is the same, right?
Okay.
The only thing I changed it is I added MegaPython and Shark Exorcist. So with 3 movies. So Fish is with Andrea.
I'm going to be faithful and stick to it.
Oh. Anyone else wants to participate?
I think it's just going to be
As it was before.
so 8, you say 8, 16, 12.
And that's it. All right? Anyone else? Up to 4 points. So, ooh. So we got 3 versus 3, right? Tough battle. Anita, who do you support today?
I think the constructor will be executed only once.
Okay, so you got a different opinion. All right, that makes everything more interesting. Anita thinks 8,
But I'm not sure about the others.
and then the others. So that means you are not going to get any
8,
points.
maybe 8, 16.
Maybe 8, 16?
16,
Yeah?
16.
Yeah? 16 again?
Yeah, 3 times 16 and 12.
12, how many times?
1.
Only once. All right,
It's just a try.
cool. Anybody else?
I'll do the same as Anita, but 12 3 times.
So then with a new solution provided by Camila, so said what? 8?
Yeah, the constructor once, and then Debugging 3 times, and mounting 3 times.
16?
Yeah,
16,
16.
16, 16, 12, 12, 12. Yep. Anyone else?
I'm going with Rochelle's.
Say it again?
I'm going with Rochelle's answer.
Okay,
It's easy.
Cool.
Once, that's it.
cool. Yeah, that's actually very interesting. So there is something very important. The components are run individually. In other words, if we run a component 3 times, like here, all the breakpoints will run 3 times. Yeah? So that means that it will stop in total 9 times. 3 times for each movie. That implies that the only acceptable answers are these ones, because they understood the flow in JavaScript. Yeah? You call a function 3 times. You call it again, another 3 stops. You call it again, another 3 stops. Then we can discuss the details, the order. But definitely, the browser will stop 9 times in total. Yep. So that's the first thing. And now, once again, to me, both answers are right. I mean, technically speaking, they are not right. Well, one of them is not right. But to me, both answers are acceptable because they make sense. Let's try to figure out the differences. So, the lobby formed by Andrea, Alex, and Fiz said, A, runs the constructor on the first movie, renders the first movie, and then runs the constructor on the second movie, renders the second movie, and then runs the constructor on the third movie, renders the third movie, and finally, it sends a message that all the free components are available. So it stops 3 times on the component mount. On the other hand, Florin, Chuck, and Kaney, they said the order is slightly different. On the first movie, constructor, render, did mount. Then, movie number 2, constructor, render, did mount. And movie number 3, constructor, render, and did mount. To me, it's hard to tell you what's the right answer, even though that I know what the right answer is. So technically speaking, I believe that's the right answer. Okay? But anyway, let's figure it out. Right, now there is something interesting, and I'm happy it happened here. Look, now nothing works. You see, I refresh the page, and it stops. It doesn't stop at all. FYI, that's a common issue with Google Chrome. You may have heard that Google Chrome is becoming the new IE, the new Internet Explorer. It's true, it's true. It fails a lot. It fails a lot. And the way to prove it fails a lot is, if something doesn't work as expected, and I close Chrome, and I open it again, and suddenly it works, that's a problem with Chrome, because I haven't changed my code. What's the problem here? It's not stopping at all on any of the breakpoints. It's definitely running the code, because I can see the result on the left-hand side. It does not stopping. That may happen on a job interview. Don't panic. Because I understand, I've been dealing with many developers that they try to demonstrate their value adding breakpoints and didn't work. And when you are in a job interview, it's a bit intimidating because you can feel it's your fault. So whenever that happens, let me check how I will personally deal with the issue. First of all, internally, blame about Google Chrome. That's the first thing. And once I feel a bit more relaxed, try Incognito. You know Incognito mode in Google Chrome? If you try Incognito, sometimes help. And what do you do in Incognito? Well, the same thing, You go to the URL, so you essentially repeat the same process in Incognito. And that is because sometimes, the extensions that you install apparently have some impact on the code you're running, which is a bit scary. In Incognito mode, there are no extensions by default. So, that's the first thing I will try to do. So, once again, let me open the snippet. So, I'm being quite gentle. I will become more and more aggressive over the next minutes if it still doesn't work. And now I will add the breakpoints again. And so, let me refresh and see if it works. It doesn't work neither. And this is where I start feeling a bit mad about Google Chrome. But that's fine. I will close Incognito. I will shut down my Google Chrome browser completely. And at the same time, you obviously have to explain to the employer what are you doing, right? Because it feels a bit weird, like, hey, I believe what they did is right. I know sometimes Chrome, blah, blah, blah. So let me close it, let me shut it down, let me open it again. And then let me go Incognito straight away. Let me paste the URL. And let me go to DevTools. Let me go to DevTools. And let me go to Sources. And then let me open app.jas. So I'm just repeating the same exercise, right? And I add a breakpoint, line number 8, line number 12, line number 16, and then I refresh. It doesn't work. So, so that's actually my next point. If none of that work, let me show you a hint. You can be extra aggressive. And how can you be extra aggressive? Look, if Google Chrome ignores you, type that. If you type the word debugger, Google Chrome will clearly trust you. If it doesn't work now, I'm going to uninstall Google Chrome, I promise. Yeah? Now it works. It's horrible. But listen, if you ever do that in a job interview, that's fantastic. Because you have a problem and you found a way, even if it's a dirty solution. Sometimes a dirty approach is the best one. Right? If it's the only one, at least, yeah, it's true, right? It's true. I mean, that happened. If there is a bug in production and you realize that someone is stealing the password of some users, which is something big, right? Something big. And you find a way to stop the attack, even if it's something horrible, without semicolons, but you solve the problem, right? So first things first, yeah? And then we'll find a better way. But for now, let's stop, yeah? Let's call the plumber. Let's stop the water leak. All right. So
we can add the debugger anywhere in the code, or
yeah, you can add the debugger. Generally speaking, what I do is I add it on the constructor, because the constructor, I hope you agree with me, is the first thing that runs. So Chrome will quickly, the guy wants to do some debugging, yeah? Debugger, that's a keyword in JavaScript. So when you add debugger, at least today, Google Chrome still trash you, yeah? Maybe in a future version, it will ignore us. So at that time, to be honest, I don't know what to do. But for now, that's enough to solve the problem. So now, you see, once you add debugger, I can add my breakpoints again. Now, as you can see, everything has been moved one line down, right? Because I added a new line. But anyway, that's the same idea. All right. So, breakpoints. Look, first of all, line number 9. That's the first constructor. Yeah, that's expected to happen. And now, what happened next? You agree with me? It will go to the render. So we are trying to display the first movie, Megasark. Render. Yeah, this is render. How do we know we are displaying Megasark and not Sark Exorcist? One of the beautiful things about debugging is you can inspect the variables. Look, I'm going to hover over title. And then it doesn't work again because of a reason. That's a bit weird. So generally speaking, when you hover variables, it gives you the value. That's not the case, but I'm sure we can find it.
is it
Is
because
it because
we
you've console logged before?
yeah.
It doesn't really matter. I'm inside of the render function. I should be able to display the title. And to be honest, look, you can see here, if you check the variable tree, this dot props, eventually you can find it. Yeah? In theory, once again, should be enough just to hover the variable. But once again, Google Chrome never stops surprising in a negative way. It's not the decade of Google Chrome. Right. There is an alternative. I mean, there are multiple ways you can inspect variables. Even if that doesn't work, you can inspect on the variable tree, or at the bottom, you can simply take the variable, right? This.props.title. Oops, title, right? Not total, title. Yeah. So that was clearly the first movie. All right. So then everybody agreed that, well, not everybody. Now the question is, will it try to complete the journey of Megasark by running component mount, or will it try to start rendering the second movie, MegaPython versus Gatoroid, 2 million budget? Let's have a look. You see, that's why Flooring team was right, because it's trying to, before completing the first render, you see, do you see anything on the left hand side? No, there's nothing. It's trying to render the second element, Constructor, and then render. What movie is that? Once again, let's figure out. Props, you see, MegaPython is the second one. So now, following the same criteria, it's not going to be stop here yet. It will stop on the Constructor of the third movie. Yeah, here you go. And now render, and then will be Sark Exorcist. Here you go. And now, once the free components have been sort of initialized, look, it will start rendering stuff here on the left hand side. You see? And now component mount will run for all the free movies. Megasark, MegaPython, and Shark Exorcist. Yeah, that's the way the flow works. I don't really care if you don't understand why it's constructor render, constructor render, constructor render, and then did mount, did mount, did mount, instead of constructor render, did mount, constructor render, did mount, constructor render, did mount. I don't care. It does to me. I'm sure there is I'm sure there is a reason, but I'm not asking you to understand that reason. Yeah, because that's a tiny detail. That's a tiny detail. The important thing is at least to know the basic flow, and the basic flow is constructor, render, and did mount, and that will happen for each movie. So if you got, how many times will the breakpoints stop if we had, for instance, 10 movies? 30. And if we have 100 movies, and if we have 112 movies, 360, wrong.
136.
Correct, 136. Yeah? Cool.
I think that is at 12 and 100.
Any questions?
The constructor, we don't need it here, do we?
No. I mean, as I told you before, technically speaking, we don't need any of that. Just to display the list of movies. I mean, are we doing anything here? No. Are we doing anything there? No. We just need the render. So why I already introduced these two methods? Because they will be important in the next workshop. And the next workshop could be a bit intense. So at least now you start getting familiar with these callback methods.
Yeah, but because we don't need it, I thought it's gonna run one time only, and then it goes.
No, even if you don't need it, I mean, React doesn't really know if you need something or not. If you declare the method, React will call it. Anything, Tiny? No? All right.
So it's not necessary to define constructor.
No. I mean, once again, look, I don't have any constructor. I don't have any of that. You see? Out. Will it work? Of course it will work, right?
So will all those functions be executed internally or?
If you declare the function constructor, which is optional, React will call it. If you define the function component did mount, React will call it. As you can see, as soon as I start typing, look, VS Code is showing me the signature. It's showing me all the available methods. We didn't cover many of them, right? It's okay for now. Component did mount, that's the important one. Anything else?
So only when we, sorry, I don't understand. Only when we explicitly define it in the code, it gets called.
That's correct.
When we don't define it, does the component get mounted or something? Because you said that's the life cycle of the.
Yeah, it's the life cycle of React. Yeah.
So even if we don't define, will it
Yeah.
call
Yeah.
internally?
That's correct. It will call internally, yeah. But you won't be able to add any logic. So if I define component mount and I do something like console.log hello Anita, that will be executed. If I don't define that method, React won't try to execute our method. It will do some internal stuff, but it won't call it.
This is better to understand the flow if you have a break somewhere in your code, just test it, right?
Yeah, agree on that. Any other questions? No? Do you want to, we got 15 minutes? Yeah, let's do a break, right? Because the other workshop is going to be intense. So let's do a break, guys. In 15 minutes, we'll run the second workshop of the day.